So in this next video, we're going to talk about supplies. We're going to talk about what we're going to be using and just some recommendations. But initially, just remember you only need a book and at very minimum a Sharpie or something to write with. I'll most likely be using a Sharpie just because I'll be using paint and other supplies on Sharpie, or paint marker works the best on top of it. So just going to show you, this is the book that I'm using. There's a hardbound book that I found in my stash that is just kind of not being utilized, so I decided to use it. This is my textbook notebook, so I just have it resting up on this cute little toolbox. I have all my little other paintbrushes out here, so we'll get into the paintbrushes and such after. Clean jar with some water in it. My paint palette is usually on my right because I'm right-handed, so I paint right. If you're left-handed, you can just feel free to, put it wherever it suits you best. I'm not left-handed, so I'm not sure if it works best on the left or on the right, but just put it wherever it feels most comfortable for you. So that's kind of the initial setup of it. I also always have a rag right beside me. So I'm just going to go over some of the supplies that I'm going to recommend that you guys have for the class if you do want to paint along. So again, let's just talk about protecting surfaces. So something to protect the surface that you're going to paint on. So this is just a dollar store tablecloth, so that'll last you like forever. If you have like an old tablecloth you don't care about, or a towel or something like that to paint on, that would be kind of like something just to protect your table because it is paint. The next thing you're going to want is you're going to want an easel. So this is a tabletop easel. You just kind of take it out like this. You're just going to take, there's like a little middle hook here. You just put it up this middle piece just like this. Okay, and if you want it to sit on the table, we're just going to go to the second hook in there. And we're just going to go to the second hook on this side. Now keeping in mind I'm doing this one-handed, so pretty decent. So then it'll just sit up like that, and then if this was your canvas would sit in there like such. I'm going to be painting flat. Normally I paint with an easel, but if you're kind of paying attention, there's this wooden frame right here, and my camera sits up top here, so that way you guys can see below what's happening. So there will be a time and place when I paint with an easel, but for kind of just the start and the purposes of this all, I will not be. So again, just book, cup of water, writing utensils, get into paintbrushes now. So the paintbrushes I'm going to recommend that you start off with for the next couple classes is at least 3 brushes. So there is this number 4 round brush. I recommend synthetic brushes. We'll get into the different kinds of brushes, etc. Just know that synthetic is kind of the best ones and they're the cheapest. So this is a number 4 round. This is a 0 liner brush. It's a really thin, long, skinny brush. A lot of people don't like this one. And actually, I'm gonna lie, there's 4 brushes I do recommend. So there's this one. This is a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, I believe it is. No, actually, this is a 1/4 inch angle brush, or 3/4. Yes, there it is. I have it on my notes. 3/4 inch angle brush. And then the last brush I'm going to recommend that you have is the 1 inch flat brush, or a 1 inch wash brush, or bright they'll call it. So I would say at least if you have those 4, there's a lot of things that you can do in this class. Another couple brushes that I will recommend is we have this little tiny square guy, and I know he doesn't seem like he would be very effective, but he is for really small detail, and he's a 1/8 flat brush. So the total amount of brushes that I do use over the course is going to be these particular 5. There may come other brushes in place at some point, but those 5 are the ones that I use most of the time. Another brush that I may bring in is this 1/4 inch flat, but not really. And then there's this palette knife that I sometimes use, and then there's this big number 12 round as well. I just use that for petals mostly, and then a toothbrush sometimes. Pencils, of course, is something that you'll need, maybe erasers, of course, a jar with some water. Cheap out, I mean, find something that you can reuse. So something like just a glass jar. If you can't find a glass jar, there's like containers or soup cans that you can use to put water in. This lid you can even use as a palette if you don't have or can't find any access to little palette, styrofoam palettes like this. And you can always like really invent, like, you know, you can use cereal boxes as well. So that's what we have. Then another couple things we're going to talk about, we're going to get into talking about what kind of canvas or material to paint on. So I have 2 different things I want to show you here. So we have an actual stretched canvas, they call it. So that is meaning that it is on a piece of board and it is actually stretched over. And then we have just a canvas board, which is exactly that. It's a board and they just glue on canvas material. So that's the difference between those 2. We'll get into that in a little bit. So it doesn't really matter what you paint on, and we'll get into the reasoning why, as long as you can prepare the surface. So we'll get into that in a little bit. This is just showing you that in case you can't find any anything to protect your surface with, you can always use news wrap. This was some scrap stuff that I had found kicking around. Some other things you might need would be painter's tape, scissors, you know, pencils, etc., you know, something like that. Then we'll get into other things you might need would be scissors, a ruler. You will need a ruler for the beginning part of the class when we get into brush control. So you will need a ruler for that, or something straight. You just need something straight to draw a straight edge. Another optional thing that we may use later on is a spray bottle. And then we'll get into cleaning. You will need to learn how to clean your brushes. So if you can't find any of the brush cleaning soap, so this is the stuff that I use. It's really good stuff. It's called the Master's Brush Cleaner. If you can't find that, use Dawn dish soap, as long as it's like a good brush cleaner or a good degreaser. So then we're going to get into paint. We're just going to briefly touch on it because we're going to get into this in a different video. I'm just showing you kind of the really basic colors that I use. I'm going to try and really narrow up the color choices that I use, and I will tell you what colors that I'm using before the class or in the beginning part of the class so you guys are aware. But for the most part, I just use basic white, so white is white. I use black. I do have a favorite black, but you know, this is just good basic black as well from the dollar store. And this is my favorite black, which is the Golden Professional black paint. Some basic browns. We have burnt umber. This is just student grade paint. This is burnt sienna, so like a redder brown. Then we get into the pinks. We have a permanent rose. I'll try and like limit these colors. I want to show you how to mix certain colors together. So I'll try and limit the amount of pink that I use. But I will be using a lot of the CAD red in the medium hue. I'll use the primary yellow, or you can use CAD yellow medium or primary yellow. I'll try to limit the amount of turquoise, but I won't lie, I love turquoise, so it'll be really hard. So we have some phthalo turquoise, but a good basic blue is the cerulean blue. It's a good sky blue. So this is a for sure. I'll just kind of pull my for sures out while we're just doing this. And then I also have a Windsor blue, which is a really bright blue. Don't look at the packaging. We'll get about this color in a minute specifically. And then we have some phthalo blue, which is very similar to this Winsor blue. Then we have some Payne's gray. This is a really dark navy blue, and some dioxazine purple. So as for the colors that you should, really have in your tool belt to start off with, is we're just going to get into just the primaries and some basic colors. So these are the very good basic colors to start off with. So we have white, black, cad red, primary yellow, and cerulean blue. So these are the 5 basic colors, and then everything else on top of that is just kind of a little bit of a bonus. I will try and gear the classes just for basic color blending. So we'll try and just use mostly those. I'll get into some other things that you should be adding into your repertoire as you go on. So yeah, that's basically what you're gonna need to start off with. And then I already talked about setup. So the next thing we're gonna talk about is brushes and what they are.